Do you have any last words? The executioner asked me. You say that every time. Nothing can separate us, not even death, said my best friend before he jumped off the balcony. The way he sounded so much like his dead girlfriend guarantees that I won't ever play with the Ouija board again. Babe, please go to move the camera further away from the baby's face. It's taking up the entire screen on the baby monitor. My wife mumbled before rolling over, going back to sleep. Honey, I replied, trembling at the side of the screen. That camera's mounted on the ceiling. The filthy old man huddled silently in the dark alley as the young girl walked by, alone. But she smelled him and turned quickly, springing upon him and sinking her glistening fangs into his grimy neck. My mom passed away, and I couldn't be happier that abusive monster was out of my life. Going through her things, I found an album of a missing persons flyers with my baby pictures for a family 1,000 miles away. I run my fingers over the engraving on the box, and I had found tucked away in the dusty antique shop. As I lift the lid, I wonder what Pandora means anyway. The man who kidnapped me 12 years ago is closer to me than my own parents. They're sitting at the next table, but he won't let me say a word. 50 days into my own social experiment, subjects are disappearing. Subject 10 is reacting well to our new hallucinogens, as I believe he is a researcher running a social experiment. I do not know why people think having a light on will protect them from the monsters. Their fear is so much more delectable after they hear and see each bulb shatter and pop, one by one. I was pretending to be a cowboy with my son when he minded throwing a lasso at me. I felt my throat clamp shut as he began to tug. I got mugged last night, but a nice young man subdued the robber and saved me. It was a bit odd, he had duct tape and zip ties on his hand, but I suppose he had his reasons. The boy pointed a gun at an armed police officer and squeezed the trigger. The toy gun jammed, but the real one did not. I grabbed my tools and climbed into the supposedly broken machine to fix what was causing the issue. What I didn't expect, however, was the incinerator door to lock shut behind me for the temperature to start getting hotter. After learning my daughter was dying, I drove 6 hours at breakneck speed to the hospital she was at. They had to wheel me in a wheelchair, and the bones were visible through the body. Like, what the fuck? They had to wheel me in a wheelchair, and the bones were visible through the bloody flesh of my destroyed feet. But at least I got to see the little pebbles before the end. I didn't think things could get any worse when I was thrown into the water with the weight attached to my ankle. It had been 3 days and I'm still drowning. I accidentally broke off the mannequin's hand as I dressed it in the store's newest clothes. As I went to reattach it, I noticed a thick, red liquid from the bone that protruded from its wrist. And this little piggy went all the way home. I sobbed as he grabbed my severed little toe, a photo of me mutilated, and a box with my parents' address on it. When I was 4, I had found a situation on my toy. Oh, a station. Shit, okay. When I was 4, I had found a station on my toy radio with a soft singing and occasional screaming. It wasn't until 10 years later that I discovered that my toy radio was a walkie-talkie. Placing the stethoscope the doctor had given her against his chest, she heard hundreds of screaming children. He handed her a lollipop, smiling while she walked out of his office feeling dazed and hollow, like a part of her was missing. When I was pulled over by flashing lights in a desolate highway, I said, "Officer, please be lenient, because I used to be a cop." As the person outside my window holstered their weapon, they responded, "What a coincidence. I used to be a cop too." When my abuser died, I couldn't shower or sleep alone for 10 years. It's nice to be out of jail now, though. After his boy returned from being lost for days, the father embraced him tightly and welcomed his sweet kisses. Passing survivors, though, were horrified to see a grown man giggling as a zombified child ate his face. "Don't worry, honey. I'll go get your friends together for your birthday. My treat." My daughter smiled weakly as she saw me attach other trains to the pipe as I prepared to capture as many of her classmates as possible to keep her company in the basement. The room was very hot and stuffy, so I opened all the windows to let in some air. For some reason, the other people in the submarine didn't like that at all. I sat sobbing next to my mother and my father's dead bodies, angry at them for the untimely suicide and their brief note left to explain some things. "This should keep you fed until the police get off your back," it read, and reluctantly I sank my teeth into the arm of one of the bodies, satisfying my hunger. With her dying breath, she pointed at the tea and said, "Poisoned, poisoned." Smiling back at her, I said, "Yes, mother, I know." I thought I was safe after putting on my suit and flushing myself into space to await rescue after the breach. Then I felt something skitter across my skin. As predicted, the sea levels rose by a couple of centimeters by 2050. The waters rose by a centimeter from each and every few many. Wait, what? Oh, okay. The waters rose by a centimeter from every few million bodies that plummeted from heaven and sank into the ocean. I recently obtained the ability to know where any smell came from. Now my victims can never escape again. I passed my doppelganger on the street today. They screamed as I slid the knife into their body and revealed I was the replacement. Blinded by the mace and trying to stem from. Wait, what the fuck? This isn't even. No. My niece's umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, and she nearly died during birth. At that time, her surviving had been a relief, but years down the line, I can only think of all the people who would still be alive if she hadn't. I was ecstatic as the genie offered me a wish, as I immediately wished for the ability to shapeshift, as I could feel my bones shattering and growing to contort my new form. I wish I knew how painful it would be. I've recently become something of a right-hand man to our local small-town detective, and we're already on a case to catch a serial killer on the loose. I wonder how the hell we're going to catch ourselves. I fell into the cavern that feeds the well of eternal life and broke my neck. I wish I hadn't taken a drink before falling in. After watching Peter Pan, my little boy wanted to go to Neverland. So once his parents were asleep, he snuck out of the house and ran blind, in hopes of becoming one of the Lost Boys. One of the most disturbing part of rain on a late night isn't the lack of sight in the darkness, and it surely isn't the loss of sound. It's the ability to see the rain rolling off the invisible, lurking bodies of the deceased. Until death do us part, I muttered to myself as I looked at my husband's hanging corpse in the doorway. I want all my problems to disappear, I told the Jinn. As you wish, he replied, its mouth twisting into a sinister grin as a needle appeared in my arm. It was bad enough that my friends and family were beginning to forget who I was. Now I can barely remember my own name. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. I said for the 598th time I tied to my tied up friends. Falling from the building, I spotted a dumpster of a pink, fluffy substance filling the container. Realizing what the pink stuff was, I wish there was no dumpster there at all. My partner and I got those cool wristbands you can tap to send a vibration to the other person to let them know that you're thinking of them. Ever since they disappeared, my wristband has not stopped vibrating until today. They said this house was haunted. I laughed aloud, knowing they were wrong. It wasn't haunted. It was filled with demons. Monsters exist. Problem is, they look just like the rest of us. Until recently, I realized my son's drawings tell the future. Now he just scribbles them in black until he fills the entire page. You have to cut even the eyes out. Oh shit, I read that wrong. You have to cut the eyes out first, my mom said, stopping me from putting the tray in the oven. Oh, just like with potatoes, I replied. She kept going through, though I begged her to stop. But it was too late. The vampire would soon meet her sickening demise after ingesting my diabolic hemophilic blood. I turned off the giant fan because it was loud and annoying. Unfortunately, the others in the helicopter didn't like that at all. Fucking motorcycle. I was diagnosed with whatever the fuck that is, as I continually pulled to my eyebrows hairs at random. As my little parasite baby slithered away, I realized being a troubled teen was the perfect disguise. She put an arm on my cheek, or another around my back. The only problem were neither of them were hers. She desperately pleaded for help during the apocalypse, but it seemed the voice was also coming from behind me. Big brother, I'm just like you, he heard as he stared at the wide-eyed copy of himself. Today I learned picking up hitchhikers is mandatory for government vehicles, if passenger space is available. Dropping them off, however, is not. My family stared vacantly after I told them my goals. Come on. Will it kill you guys again to express yourselves? I heard a gunshot from across the street, so I got dressed and went to investigate. I found my neighbor bleeding from its mouth, and I say, "Good job, son. Let's bring him to the truck." I was feeling thirsty, so I got up to grab a soda out of the fridge. I couldn't find it at first, but then I remembered. I put it up behind a homeless man's head, not his arms and legs. As I heard the downstairs window break, I hailed and dialed the police and told them my address. "But I'm already at your house," the voice on the other line replied. "So long, Mr. Stevens," as the AI receptionist said to me as I carried my suitcase out of the hotel. Deep within the forest, I opened the suitcase and whispered to the naked, faceless corpse of my creator. "So long, Mr. Stevens." When we lost contact with Earth, it became a waiting game here on the space station. Which we would run out first? Sustenance? Or our wills to live? But something showed up on the sensors. Something that wrecked Earth and is still hungry. Alright guys, thanks for watching.